The millionaire ignored the female beggar, but can't take his eyes off the pool. The sun blasted down on the sprawling Montgomery estate, its rays bouncing off the flawless blue water of the giant pool like a spotlight on a secret. David Montgomery stood on the marble terrace, his gaze locked on that shimmering surface, cold and unreadable. Nearby, a woman kneeling on cracked pavement tugged at his sleeve, a silent figure, dirt smudged on her face, her eyes pleading. But David's world was made of glass and gold. He barely spared her a glance. Instead, he stared hard at the pool as if it held answers no one else could see. Inside the mansion, Cecilia Johnson adjusted Clara's bow. The little girl's curls spilled like waves, untouched by the heavy heat. Cecilia's hands trembled, unseen beneath the silk ribbons. The child giggled, unaware of the storm inside the nanny. David's eyes flicked toward them briefly, cold and distant, like fog swallowing a faint light. His judgment, the laughter hid cracks beneath the surface, but David never noticed. Or worse, he pretended not to. Out by the pool, the spotless water mirrored the sky, but the air was thick, electric with tension, like the calm before a massive thunderclap. Cecilia's mind flicked to her own past, a sharp stab deep inside, memories she shoved under layers of quiet strength. Loss, abandonment, the kind of loneliness wrapped in silken scarves and shiny surfaces that no one dared to touch. Just as Cecilia started feeling a fragile sense of purpose bloom, a little sanctuary in Clara's sparkling eyes, a sudden storm crashed in. Helen, David's ex-wife. The air shifted, darkened, as if a shadow had crept in through the ornate front doors. Helen's smile was sugar-coated poison, words twining like soft chains. She claimed Cecilia was a threat, that the nanny's past was dangerous, that Clara needed protection. The house pulsed with whispers and sharp looks, like predators circling. Cecilia's hands clenched, nails digging into palms. Her heart hammered like a warning drum. Clara's innocent glance towards Cecilia sparked a light in David's soul, something long dormant and locked away. He saw it now, a bond unspoken but fierce, something raw and real. Yet fear and old scars held him back, twisting the space between them. Helen's secrets began to unravel slowly, a painful weave of lies and half-truths that could destroy them all. The fragile peace shattered, replaced by a whirlwind of doubt and rage. David staggered, caught at the crossroads of desire and duty, love and suspicion. His eyes darted between Cecilia and Helen, caught in a silent battle that no words could settle. The pool reflected the chaos back at him, deep, unpredictable, dangerous. The summer heat pressed down like a weight, thick and suffocating. And as the sun dipped lower, painting long shadows across the estate, what would he choose? And could Cecilia face the coming storm without breaking? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. David's fist clenched tighter as he stood on that marble terrace, his heartbeat echoing like thunder in his ears. The chaos stirred inside him. The weight of unspoken words pressed heavy, suffocating. Clara's innocent eyes flicked nervously between him and. But before the turmoil could consume him, the air shifted abruptly. A loud crash erupted from the mansion, slicing through the tension like a jagged knife. Glass shattered. David spun around, breath hitching. The sound echoed ominously through the estate, pulling everyone into a raw, electric silence. "What was that?" Cecilia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. David's eyes darted toward the front entrance. Helen's smile vanished, melting into shock. The colors drained from her face, like someone had stolen the very light from her soul. "Stay here," David commanded, his voice firm, punctuated by urgency. He didn't wait for a response before sprinting toward the mansion. Each echoing step fueled his racing heart. Inside, chaos unfolded. A tall figure stood there, silhouetted against the shattered remnants of a decorative vase, shards littering the polished floor. David felt a sharp intake of breath. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice steady, yet quaking with adrenaline. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face David recognized all too well. His chest tightened. He staggered back. "Ryan?" The name hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Ryan, David's estranged brother, a ghost from the past, a reminder of everything he'd buried. But there was something sharper now, a cruel twist in Ryan's expression. His eyes held secrets, dark, heavy ones that dripped with betrayal. "You," Ryan hissed, voice low, filled with venom. "You really thought you could just erase me from your life?" David's mind spiraled. Underneath the shock was a flood of emotions: guilt, anger, confusion. "Why are you here?" The question tumbled out, desperate, seeking clarity amidst the storm. Ryan stepped further into view, and behind him a blanket draped over something. A small bundle, not quite large enough to be a child. David's breath quickened, and he hesitated, a lump forming in his throat. "What is that?" With one swift movement, Ryan threw the blanket off, revealing a small, battered box. David's heart lurched. It was an old jewelry box, faded and worn, a remnant from their childhood, buried deep in memories. "You left this behind," Ryan spat, eyes narrowing. "But I found something else. Something you need to see." "What do you mean?" The air around them felt suffocating. The tension increased, thrumming like a taut wire about to snap. "I've been watching you, and I know your secrets," Ryan growled, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Secrets about Clara, about Cecilia. You think you're the perfect father, the perfect husband, but you're just a shadow of what you should be." Before David could react, Ryan opened the box, revealing a stack of crumpled letters, their edges worn and frayed, letters that were never meant to return to light. David felt his blood run cold. Words from his past spilled out like a torrential downpour, each syllable soaked in betrayal and raw pain. "Ryan, stop!" David shouted, his voice cracking, a desperate plea. But the storm had already begun, and it swirled around them like a cyclone. Outside, the sun dipped beyond the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the estate. Cecilia's eyes widened in horror as she instinctively stepped back, caught in the crossfire of revelations. David felt her fear resonate within him, a shared connection of dread suddenly bubbling to the surface. "Every lie you've built." The ground felt unsteady beneath David's feet, and just as he prepared to confront his brother, a shattering scream pierced the tension, a cry that echoed through the mansion, urgent and pained. It wasn't just a sound, it was a harbinger of devastation. Clara's voice. David's heart sank, panic gripping him. "Clara!" he shouted, breaking away from Ryan, a father's instinct kicking in. The weight of Ryan's words faded momentarily. Something darker loomed ahead, a future unfolding that could undo everything he held dear. As he rushed toward that anguished call, dread filled his veins. What had just been unveiled? What truths lay ahead, ready to unravel lives forever? Each question clawed at him as he raced against time, desperate to protect what remained. But shadows loomed large, and nothing felt certain anymore. David bolted through the mansion, heart racing. Clara's voice rang in his ears, like a bell tolling in a dark night. "Clara!" Panic fueled his legs, each step faster, a desperate rhythm that pulsed through him. He reached the living room, breathless, and froze. The sight before him sent a tremor down his spine. Clara was crumpled on the floor, clutching a tattered doll, tears streaming down her cheeks. Helen knelt beside her, a mask of unease barely concealing her calculated demeanor. "What happened?" David's voice cracked, the urgency swelling. "I tried to get her to eat, and she just screamed." Helen replied, her tone oddly calm. David's chest tightened. Something felt off, like a string pulled too tight, ready to snap. As he rushed forward, Clara looked up at him, fear pooling in her wide eyes. "Daddy, she said things." Clara's tiny voice trembled. "What things?" David knelt beside her, wiping away her tears. "What did she say?" Before Clara could answer, there was a loud crash from the hallway, like thunder in the quiet air. David's heart dropped. He turned to see Ryan, still lurking in the shadows, eyes blazing with something dark, something deeper than anger. "Enough of this play acting, David." Ryan's voice sliced through the chaos, his tone mocking, dangerous. "Do you even know the truth about your precious Clara?" David's stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" Each word dripped with tension, desperate yet unyielding. Ryan stepped closer, gaze fixed on Clara, and for a moment, David saw something emerge in Ryan's eyes, a twisted kind of glee. "She's not yours. Not really. You think you know your family? Think again." Silence hung heavy in the air, as thick as the humidity outside. "What do you mean?" David pressed, confusion colliding with fear. "There are things you don't remember, brother," Ryan sneered, his lips curling into a wicked smile. "Things that change everything. I found out she's not just a little girl. She has secrets of her own." The words struck David like lightning. His chest tightened further, each breath coming harder as memories fluttered like ghosts just beyond reach. Clara's laughter echoed hollow, distant. "No, it can't be true." From the corner, Cecilia emerged, eyes wide with dread as she caught the exchange. "What's happening? What secrets?" Her voice shattered the tension, vulnerable yet demanding. Suddenly, David's phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. He fumbled, pulling it out, shaking. One new message. He glanced down, and his heart stopped. A picture flashed on the screen, one he couldn't comprehend. In the image, a small hand held something, a birth certificate. His breath caught. The name on it jolted through him like ice water. Clara Montgomery. "David?" Cecilia's voice broke through his fog of confusion, but he couldn't respond. The truth blinked back at him like a siren, a revelation that could shatter everything he thought was real. Ryan smirked. "Didn't think I'd come with evidence, did you? Clara's past is just as twisted as ours. You've been living a lie, and so has she." David felt his world tilt. Every painstaking moment, every carefully crafted memory, tore apart in an instant. "No, this can't be. Clara's my daughter." But his voice trembled and doubt seeped in. The living room felt like a stage where the play had gone horribly wrong. David's heart raced, fear coiling tight as if it had a grip on his throat. What if everything he believed, every precious moment he shared with Clara, was built on a foundation of lies? Outside, the sun sank lower, darkness creeping in like a thick fog. David's mind raced. Questions spun. Who was Clara? Who was he? And why did everything feel real and unreal at once? "Tell me it isn't true," he shouted, desperation painting every word. But silence swallowed his cry. It wrapped around them, heavy and thick, pregnant with uncertainty. And as the shadows deepened, David stood on the precipice of truth, a choice to confront a past that felt both foreign and frightening. What would he do next? Would the truth tear him apart, or could it somehow stitch him back together? Everything stood poised on the edge, ready to tumble into chaos. The weight of the unknown bore down on him, and David had never felt more helpless. What heartbreak awaited them all? The storm had only just begun. David's world spun around him, each breath heavy with disbelief. Clara's small sobs punctured the silence, and Ryan's triumphant smirk made his skin prickle. He felt the air grow colder, as if the shadows were swallowing all warmth. "What do you mean?" he repeated, but the words felt weak, empty. Ryan stepped closer, eyes gleaming. "You really don't remember, do you? You've buried it deep, but I know what happened, and so does she." "Enough!" Cecilia's voice cut through the tension, fierce and protective. "Leave her out of this." Her eyes darted to David, demanding answers, her face pale with fear. But before David could respond, the atmosphere shattered like the fragile vase that now lay in pieces on the floor. A blaring alarm pierced the air, drowning out their voices. David's heart raced as he spotted the red lights flashing from the security system. "What's happening?" Panic sliced through him as he caught sight of shadowy figures moving outside. He dashed to the window, fear clenching his chest. Outside the estate, chaos erupted. A group of masked men swarmed the property, moving swiftly with a clear purpose. "Security!" David shouted, but no one was there. The calm facade of his affluent life crumbled into panic. Cecilia pulled Clara closer, shielding her. "What do we do?" Her voice trembled, her eyes darting between David and the growing threat outside. "Get to the back room," David ordered, acting on instinct. He didn't have time to process the chaos. Every second weighed down with urgency. He grabbed Clara's hand, pulling her to him, feeling her small fingers tighten around his. Just as they turned to flee, a loud crash echoed through the hallway, causing Clara to scream, and David's heart dropped. The door splintered, and two men rushed in, their faces masked, eyes cold and menacing. "Stay back!" He shielded Clara with his body, adrenaline pumping through him like fire. The intruders froze, taken aback by his fierce resolve. But the moment hung thick in the air, and a fight was inevitable. "David, what do we do?" Cecilia's voice trembled as she clutched Clara, her face pale. But before he could answer, Ryan lunged forward, a wild look in his eyes. "No, you don't understand. It's all connected." He pointed frantically at David, then at Clara. "You think you're protecting her? You're holding on to a lie. What are you talking about?" David shouted back, shock and anger mixing into a potent cocktail. With a desperate look, Ryan stepped right into the path of the intruders, hands raised. "I'll tell you, Clara, she's not who you think she is. She's—" A loud shot rang out, echoing through the mansion, slicing through the chaos. David's heart stopped. Everything felt suspended, even his breath. Clara gasped, eyes wide with terror. Cecilia screamed, pulling Clara behind her. David turned, mouth dry, panic flooding his senses. Ryan was on the floor, the weight of his body heavy against the marble. "Ryan!" David cried, rushing to his brother's side, confusion flooding every thought. But as he knelt, the truth lay twisted in the air around them. The masked men froze, and the silence was deafening. "Do you see now?" Ryan's voice was a rasp, the life ebbing from him. "She's your daughter, but she's not." With those words hanging like smoke, the realization crashed over David like a tidal wave. Clara's eyes, misty and confused, searched his face for answers. His heart raced, each thump drowning in a sea of dread. "Not what?" he whispered, nearly choking on the words as panic tightened his throat. But before Ryan could answer, his breath escaped him, and darkness swiftly took over. The masked figures exchanged glances, confusion lining their primitive expressions. It was a moment frozen in horror where the world felt heavy, like a night without stars. Tension crackled, and David felt every unanswered question swell inside him until it threatened to tear him apart. Everything he thought he knew about family, about love, unraveled in that instant. What did it mean that she was not his? Who was she, really? And suddenly, the very existence of Clara slipped into a chasm of uncertainty. The alarms continued to blare, but in that moment, a rain of silence descended, stretching out in front of them, like an endless road of dread. What was coming now? What truths were lurking, ready to emerge from the shadows? The chaos was just beginning, and David stood helplessly on the brink of despair, the air thick with unanswered questions, as all that he held dear teetered on the edge of oblivion. David knelt there, his heart racing, the weight of Ryan's words crashing. She whimpered, her small body trembling against him. Before David could answer, the two masked intruders rushed into the room with aggressive grins. Shouts erupted, chaos exploding again. "Get down!" David shouted, throwing his body in front of Clara. The looming figures didn't hesitate. "Grab him!" one of them barked, lunging towards David. A punch landed hard against David's jaw, sending him sprawling back. Pain flared, but Clara's cries cut through the fog. "No, don't hurt him!" Her voice rang with panic, and it made David's blood boil. He forced himself up, adrenaline sharpening his senses. "Cecilia! Get Clara to safety!" he yelled, as he launched himself at the nearest intruder. But the room erupted in chaos. They were overpowered now. The sound of shouted commands, mixed with Clara's terrified sobs, created a symphony of fear. In the fray, Cecilia grabbed Clara, shielding her with her body, desperation etched on her face. "Stay close," she shouted, forcing Clara backward into a corner. Ryan lay on the floor, struggling for breath. "David," he gasped, eyes filled with something that wasn't just pain. Was it guilt? Was he truly trying to help now? "You have to listen." "Clara, A loud bang silenced Ryan's plea. The second intruder had fired a shot, missing David, but shattering a nearby window. Glass flew everywhere, sparkling like deadly rain. Panic reignited in David's chest. "Out! Everyone, out!" David roared, grabbing Ryan by the collar and dragging him away from danger. They stumbled, but Ryan's eyes were unfocused, his mind clearly somewhere else. Suddenly, a strange voice interrupted. A woman, stepping through the doorway behind the attackers. "Stop, everyone!" Her tone was commanding, slicing through the chaos like a knife. The intruders hesitated, confusion flashing across their faces. David caught a glimpse of the newcomer, a tall woman with icy blue eyes and a cool demeanor. She wore a long black coat and moved with a grace that seemed otherworldly. "Who are you?" David shouted, his heart still racing. "I'm here for the girl," she replied, her eyes now locked on Clara. David froze. "What do you mean?" The words left his mouth before he could hold them back. The entire room shifted, tension smothering every breath. With a swift movement, the woman pulled a device from her pocket, a small, sleek gadget buzzing with energy. Before anyone could respond, she pointed it at Clara. "No!" David lunged forward to shield his daughter, desperation clawing at his gut. But the woman only smirked. "You don't know what she really is, do you?" "What are you talking about?" David's voice cracked. "She's my daughter." "Not the daughter you think." Her voice dripped with contempt. "Clara isn't just a girl. She's part of something much bigger. Something you'll never understand." David felt a chill grip him. He glanced at Clara, her innocent face now shadowed with something deeper. Ryan tried to speak, but grabbed his throat, choking back his words as if realizing what they all could lose. Just then, something shifted in the air. A powerful gust blew through the open window. The light flickered, and for a moment, everything paused, like a breath held too long. David's heart hammered violently against his ribs. And in that very instant, Clara answered the woman, voice steady despite the tremors in her small frame. I am more. Shock radiated through the room, solid and unyielding. David felt air leave his lungs. What did she mean? How was that possible? It echoed in his mind like an insistent whisper, haunting. The woman smiled, a predator smile. You see, David, her true nature is what we've been waiting for. And you just put us all in danger. Fear ripped through him. The truth was unraveling. And suddenly everything, every moment, every secret, felt like a mirror shattering into a million pieces. What were they up against? Who was Clara really? David's thoughts tangled like threads in a storm. The room buzzed with uncertainty, leaving him breathless, time standing still as the reality sank in like a stone. He looked at Clara again, longing to protect her, yet realizing he needed to understand. What had he missed all along? As the masked intruders scowled, David understood one thing for sure. The world he knew was about to change forever, and there was no turning back now. David stood frozen, emotions swirling like a storm inside him. Clara's eyes widened, shimmering with confusion and innocence. The woman's gaze was steady, revealing nothing but a chilling certainty. The masked men hesitated, and the room fell into a tense silence. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the mansion. The noise rattled the walls, heavy and ominous, like thunder announcing an unseen storm. David's heart raced. What now? His thoughts raced, gripping Clara tightly. Stay close, he ordered, his voice fierce yet shaky. Before anyone could react, the front door burst open with a deafening bang. 2 uniformed police officers stormed in, guns drawn. Everyone, hands up, they shouted, eyes scanning the chaos. Relief and confusion collided. Thank God, David gasped. Help us, they're here to hurt us. But just as the officers stepped forward, the woman with icy eyes moved with a fluid grace. No, she shouted, raising her device again. A blinding light erupted from it, filling the room with an unsettling glow. David shielded his eyes, panic racing through him as Clara shrieked in terror. The world spun, colors blurring, faces twisting into shadows. In that momentary daze, everything felt wrong. When he blinked, the room was different. The masked intruders stood still, eyes wide, and the officers froze, mouths gaping. But the woman? She looked triumphant, as if she had just cast some dark spell. What did you do? David shouted, noticing Clara had gone quiet. He turned to her, and panic gripped him. She stood there, but not like before. There was something different about her, a spark of awareness flickering in her eyes that sent chills down his spine. Clara? His voice wavered. The woman smiled. You can see now, can't you? David felt his breath catch, fear curling around him like an invisible hand. What do you mean? What's happening? Clara blinked, and suddenly there was a shift. The light dimmed, and silence fell heavy around them. One of the officers blinked rapidly, then, as if waking from a trance, spoke. What just happened? We were responding to a silent alarm. The tension shifted again. Why are you here? David demanded, the urgency in his voice rising. You're not supposed to be involved, the woman replied, her confidence unwavering. You don't even know who she really is. The reemergence was not meant to happen yet. David felt his heart pound. What are you talking about? But just then, Clara took a step forward, her small shape radiating something he had never seen before. I remember, she whispered, shock rippling through the room. Clara? David's heart sank, confusion flooding every ounce of his being. What do you mean you remember? I remember my other life, before. Clara's voice trailed off, and the words hung in the air like a thick fog. Those simple words pulled the ground out from under David. What other life? Where is this coming from? The woman interrupted, a knowing smile on her lips. It seems she's finally connecting the dots. You've held her back, concealed the truth. Truth? What truth? The room spun around him, shock settling like lead in his stomach. You were never meant to keep her. I gave her to you to protect her from what's coming. The foundation you've built, it's all about to crumble. Clara's eyes widened in fear. What's coming? But before anyone could answer, a deafening rumble echoed like thunder, shaking the very walls of the mansion. The floor trembled beneath them, and pieces of plaster fell from the ceiling like rain. David's instincts kicked in. "Run!" he yelled. But even as he spoke, the reality hit him hard. What if she was right? What if he had been keeping Clara from a truth that could unravel everything? As they turned to escape, the lights flickered, and then darkness. Everything went black. No sounds, no whispers, only the disorienting void. In that immediate chaos, David felt a cold dread wrap around him, uncertainty gnawing at his heart. Had he just stepped into a nightmare he couldn't wake up from? Was Clara truly meant for something more? Something he couldn't see? Or was everything he knew just an illusion, pulling them deeper into a darkness that threatened to consume them all? The weight of the unknown pressed down around him as shadows danced within. They were trapped in a reality that was no longer theirs, and the truth remained hidden in the dark, waiting to be unearthed. The darkness wrapped around them, suffocating and overwhelming. In this sudden void, David felt Clara's small hand tremble in his grip. "Daddy?" she whispered, fear lacing her voice. He couldn't see her face, but he could feel her anxiety radiate through the silence. "Stay close, Clara. I'm right here," he reassured, though panic clawed at him. He tried to focus, to regain his bearings. The hum of the fading alarm was replaced by a thick silence, unnatural, as if the house itself held its breath. As David strained to listen, a loud crack echoed from somewhere deep within the mansion. It was sharp and close, like the sound of thunder rolling through the air. A rapid series of footsteps followed, pounding closer, and then soft light flooded back, cutting through the darkness, revealing the living room, its beauty shattered. The masked intruders stood frozen, uncertainty flaring in their eyes. They looked ready to fight, but unsure of their next move. Suddenly, a distortion rippled across the room, as if reality itself was bending. David squinted, trying to grasp what he was seeing. The woman had not moved, but her device emitted a pulse of energy that crackled like electricity. "Enough games," she shouted, rage simmering just beneath her calm facade. And then, as if a switch had been flipped, Clara stepped away from David's side, her eyes locking onto the woman. It was as if an invisible force pulled her forward. "Stop!" David yelled, but her feet seemed no longer her own. In that moment, she responded in a voice that was not her own, powerful and echoing. "You think you can control me?" Clara's tone shifted, the childlike innocence melting away to reveal something fierce and ancient. The room vibrated with energy, a low hum that made David's skin tingle. "What are you doing?" David felt his heart race. But Clara's small form began to glow, enveloped in a brilliant light that swallowed the darkness, illuminating everything around her. David's breath hitched, confusion and fear battling inside him. He staggered back, watching as the air shimmered like heat rising from asphalt, swirling, changing everything. "Clara!" he cried, lunging forward, but a powerful force knocked him back, sending him sprawling to the ground. From his vantage point, he saw Ryan's body suddenly convulse. The look in his eyes shifted from pain to clarity. "She's the key, the one they feared," he gasped, fingers trembling on the carpet as he pushed himself to his elbows. "What do you mean?" David's words came out hoarse, every instinct telling him to protect Clara. And as he looked back, he saw her arms outstretched, the glow intensifying, illuminating the features of everyone in the room. The intruders were no longer just thugs, their faces contorted in shock, revealing fear that mirrored David's own. Then, in a whirlwind of blinding light, Clara screamed, "No more hiding!" With a blinding flash, the room exploded into raw chaos. The very foundation of everything felt like it was shifting. David tried to shield his eyes, but the brilliance burned through, and the other inhabitants were thrown back by an unseen force. When the light cut out, a deafening silence followed. The remnants of the previous chaos hung, but something was different. David rubbed his eyes, trying to adapt to the new reality. And there, floating where Clara had just been, was something unexpected, a swirling mist that seemed alive. It pulsed with energy and vibrated with a strange frequency. "Clara?" he called, dread filling his voice. The mist whispered back, but he couldn't grasp the words. They shimmered at the edge of his sanity. Then, a shocking thought bloomed in his mind. What if Clara wasn't just his daughter? What if she was something more? The pieces clicked in place like shattered glass, reforming into a new shape. "Her powers!" Ryan gasped, rising with difficulty. "She's more than you think." And in that instant, a bombshell detonated in David's mind, far more shattering than anything else before. If Clara wasn't just a girl, if she was part of something much larger, what did that make him? What was he even protecting? In the thick silence that followed, doubt raised a chilling start. "No, I can't," David stammered, his mind racing with every implication, every horrifying possibility. As the air hummed around them, forming a barrier of tension, David realized they weren't safe yet. The answer lay just beyond the mist, cloaked in shadows, waiting to be unearthed. And deep down, he feared what they might uncover as the truth stretched its long fingers into the light. David stood frozen, emotions swirling like a storm inside him. Clara's eyes widened, shimmering with confusion and innocence. The woman's gaze was steady, revealing nothing but a chilling certainty. The masked men hesitated, and the room fell into a tense silence. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from somewhere deep within the mansion. It rattled the walls, heavy and ominous, like thunder announcing an unseen storm. David's heart raced. What now? His thoughts cascaded, gripping Clara tightly. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice fierce yet shaky. Before anyone could react, the front door burst open with a deafening bang. 2 uniformed police officers stormed in, guns drawn. "Everyone hands up," they shouted, eyes scanning the chaos. Relief and confusion collided. "Thank God," David gasped. "Help us! They're here to hurt us!" But just as the officers stepped forward, the woman with icy eyes moved with fluid grace. "No!" she shouted, raising her device again. A blinding light erupted from it, filling the room with an unsettling glow. David shielded his eyes, panic racing through him as Clara shrieked in terror. The world spun, colors blurring, faces twisting into shadows. In that momentary daze, everything felt wrong. When he blinked, the room became different. The masked intruders stood still, eyes wide, and the officers froze, mouths gaping. But the woman? She looked triumphant, as if she had just cast some dark spell. "Who are you?" David shouted, his heart pounding. "I'm here for the girl," she replied, her eyes now locked on Clara. David felt his heart drop even further. "What do you mean?" The room hummed like a live wire, crackling with tension. Then Clara took a step forward, her small shape beginning to glow with an otherworldly light. David felt the ground shift beneath him. Anxiety swirled like a tempest in his gut. "Clara?" he called out, fear wrapping around him like cold fingers. I remember, Clara said, her voice steady but different. She looked older somehow, as if something had awakened within her. Moments passed, silence weighing heavily in the room. What do you mean, remember? David felt sweat bead on his forehead, panic clawing at him. As if in response to his fear, the woman stepped closer, a gleam of excitement in her eyes. Yes, this is it, the awakening. And suddenly, a shocking surge of energy coursed through the room. Clara's glow intensified. Louder and brighter, so brilliant it nearly blinded him. Then, everything changed. Just as David reached for his daughter, the light flickered and a portal opened behind her, swirling and churning with colors unseen. A dark shadow emerged, looming larger and larger, until it burst forth with a force that sent everyone sprawling backward. David braced himself, but the gravity of the moment held him still. From the darkness, a familiar, chilling voice called out, piercing through the chaos. Clara! David's heart sank. It was his mother. He hadn't seen her in years. But she looked different now, shadows swirling around her like smoke. Her eyes shimmered with knowledge, dark, deceptive knowledge. Why are you here? David stuttered, panic gripping him as if about to drown. I've come to retrieve what should have never been taken, she whispered, voice smooth yet dripping with bitterness. She's mine, and you've kept her from her destiny. Clara gasped, confusion melded with dread. Mommy? David felt a shattering sense of betrayal. No, you can't take her, she's mine! But whatever bond he felt with Clara began to splinter. Mommy, please! Clara cried, the innocence in her voice replaced with a raw need for connection. No! David screamed, feeling the walls closing in, his heart racing with the devastating realization that Clara might choose to follow her instead. The room buzzed with an electric fear, filling the very air they breathed. David ran to Clara. But the weight of the moment crushed him. How could everything he believed collapse like this? Had they been standing on a precipice all along? And in that frantic moment, one thing became painfully clear. Clara was not just a girl. She was caught in a web that transcended their world, a legacy clinging to her like an invisible chain. What did this mean for them? What would David do now that the truth had churned violently at the fabric of their lives? A new reality hung heavily in the air, dangling the question, who truly belonged to whom? The shadows deepened, but within them a glimmer of hope remained, a spark of defiance waiting to ignite. Would Clara choose David, or would the pull of her mother's dark offer keep her bound? David feared the answer might shatter everything he thought he knew about love, family, and the very essence of what it meant to protect. David stood frozen, emotions swirling like a storm inside him. Clara's eyes widened, shimmering with confusion and innocence. The woman's gaze was steady, revealing nothing but a chilling certainty. The masked men hesitated, and the room fell into a tense silence. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from somewhere deep within the mansion. It rattled. What now? His thoughts cascaded, gripping Clara tightly. Stay close, he ordered, his voice fierce yet shaky. Before anyone could react, the front door burst open with a deafening bang. 2 uniformed police officers stormed in, guns drawn. Everyone, hands up, they shouted, eyes scanning the chaos. Relief and confusion collided. Thank God, David gasped. Help us, they're here to hurt us. But just as the officers stepped forward, the woman with icy eyes moved with fluid grace. No, she shouted, raising her device again. A blinding light erupted from it, filling the room with an unsettling glow. David shielded his eyes, panic racing through him as Clara shrieked in terror. The world spun, colors blurring, faces twisting into shadows. In that momentary daze, everything felt wrong. When he blinked, the room became different. The masked intruders stood still, eyes wide, and the officers froze, mouths gaping. But the woman? She looked triumphant, as if she had just cast some dark spell. "Who are you?" David shouted, his heart pounding. "I'm here for the girl," she replied, her eyes now locked on Clara. David felt his heart drop even further. "What do you mean?" The room hummed like a live wire, crackling with tension. Then Clara took a step forward, her small shape beginning to glow with an otherworldly light. David felt the ground shift beneath him. Anxiety swirled like a tempest in his gut. "Clara?" he called out, fear wrapping around him like cold fingers. "I remember," Clara said, her voice steady but different. She looked older somehow, as if something had awakened within her. Moments passed, silence weighing heavily in the room. "What do you mean, remember?" David felt sweat bead on his forehead, panic clawing at him. As if in response to his fear, the woman stepped closer, a gleam of excitement in her eyes. "Yes, this is it. The awakening." And suddenly a shocking surge of energy coursed through the room. Clara's glow intensified, louder and brighter, so brilliant it nearly blinded him. Then everything changed. Just as David reached for his daughter, the light flickered and a portal opened behind her, swirling and churning with colors unseen. A dark shadow emerged, looming larger and larger, until it burst forth with a force that sent everyone sprawling backward. David braced himself, but the gravity of the moment held him still. From the darkness, a familiar, chilling voice called out, piercing through the chaos. "Clara!" David's heart sank. It was his mother. He hadn't seen her in years, but she looked different now, shadows swirling around her like smoke. Her eyes shimmered with knowledge, dark, deceptive knowledge. "Why are you here?" David stuttered, panic gripping him, as if about to drown. "I've come to retrieve what should have never been taken," she whispered, voice smooth, yet dripping with bitterness. "She's mine, and you've kept her from her destiny." Clara gasped, confusion melded with dread. "Mommy?" David felt a shattering sense of betrayal. "No, you can't take her. She's mine." But whatever bond he felt with Clara began to splinter. "Mommy, please," Clara cried, the innocence in her voice replaced with a raw need for connection. "No," David screamed, feeling the walls closing in, his heart racing with the devastating realization that Clara might choose to follow her instead. The room buzzed with an electric fear, filling the very air they breathed. David ran to Clara, but the weight of the moment crushed him. How could everything he believed collapse like this? Had they been standing on a precipice all along? And in that frantic moment, one thing became painfully clear. Clara was not just a girl. She was caught in a web that transcended their world, a legacy clinging to her like an invisible chain. Just then, everything shifted. The device the woman held beeped, and a bright flash erupted. Suddenly, it felt as if time stopped, the air thick and charged. No one moved. The officers and masked men stared, captivated. The ground shook, and then everything exploded. The room split open, sending debris flying, screaming echoes bouncing off the walls. David shielded Clara as the force pushed him back. He couldn't see, only felt the weight of the chaos, a storm surging around them. And then, silence. Slowly, David opened his eyes, heart pounding in his chest. In that stillness, something shifted. A figure stood at the epicenter of the devastation. A young girl, much like Clara, but with eyes filled with knowing darkness. "You found me at last," she said, her voice chillingly familiar. David's breath caught, shock ripping through him. She looked like Clara, but wasn't. Confusion swirled in his mind. Clara blinked, stunned. "Who are you?" "Your sister," the girl replied. Her smile twisted, as if relishing the moment. It's time for the truth. Everything David thought he knew shattered. His world tilted, and Clara's spark dimmed, as shadows circled them. The room felt fraught with secrets, lies that had twisted through time. "Wait," David choked, panic erupting. "No, this isn't possible!" But the truth crashed down like thunder, each word echoing in his mind, spinning him into chaos. The young girl began to glow, the very air around them buzzing with raw energy. Where did she come from? Who was she really? The answers lunged out of reach, slipping away like sand through fingers. As darkness threatened to consume him, a chilling realization struck. Family ties can bind and break in ways you never imagined. What did this mean for Clara? For their hurried escape? What war raged that they were now caught in the eye of? "Choices have consequences," the girl said softly, her gaze drifting to Clara. "And you're just beginning to understand." And with that haunting statement hanging in the air, the world around them began to shift again. The portal crackled, dark energy swirling. This was only the beginning, and David could feel the weight of destiny looming, pulling them in ways he never thought possible, leaving him breathless at the edge of an unfathomable truth. In that moment, everything hung by a thread. David's heart raced in his chest, torn between his love for Clara and the unsettling truth that lingered in the room. "Clara, don't listen to her," he shouted, desperation coating every word. He tried to push through the chaos, every instinct screaming to protect her. But Clara stood still, her eyes wide, searching for answers. "I want to know, who am I?" Her voice trembled, a chink in her armor of innocence. The girl, her sister, smiled as if this was all part of some twisted game. "Your mother has kept you from the truth," the girl insisted, her voice laced with familiarity. "You belong to a world beyond this one, a world where you can be so much more." David's breath hitched. "Clara, listen to me." He reached out, hands trembling. "You're my daughter. I love you. Nothing can change that." "But am I?" Clara's voice cracked, her gaze shifting between her mother and the girl. Confusion twisted her small features. The air crackled with tension. The masked men shifted, glancing at each other, unsure. The officers stood at a standstill, their guns lowered but ready. David felt the ground beneath him tremble as shadows danced in the corners of the room, beckoning for chaos. Just then, a series of loud bangs sounded from outside, pulling David's attention. The sound of sirens wailed nearer, cutting through the thick atmosphere. The masked figures exchanged nervous looks, uncertainty seeping into their bravado. "Time's running out," David shouted, urgency clawing at his throat. "We have to make a choice now." Clara looked back at David, searching his eyes. "Daddy, please." Something shifted within her. The glow intensified, wrapping around them in a warm embrace, banishing the shadows. David felt a surge of hope. "You have the power, Clara. Remember who you are." With those words, Clara took a deep breath, her small body radiating strength and light. The sister stared, shocked. "No, you can't!" But it was too late. Clara raised her arms, and a wave of energy shot through the room. The ground beneath them shook violently, and in that instant, the darkness began to recede, retreating from the light. With an ear-splitting crash, a fissure opened, a blinding portal swirling with colors bright and vivid. David instinctively reached for Clara, pulling her close. "Together, we can face this," he urged, his voice trembling with fear and resolve. In one unified motion, David and Clara stepped into the light, leaving the chaos behind. The sister and the woman were swallowed by the shadows, their voices fading into silence. And then, just like that, they were free. They stood in an open field, vibrant and breathing with life. Clara blinked up at David, her eyes wide but filled with clarity. The weight of uncertainty faded, replaced with warmth, a sense of belonging. "Daddy, I feel different," Clara said softly, her voice steady, eyes sparkling. "I'm here, and I'll fight for you, for us," David promised, feeling the weight of all they had overcome. But as they took in their surroundings, questions swirled again, thick and heavy. What lay ahead? What dangers awaited them? They couldn't go back. They could never return to the life they once knew. And as the sun dipped low, casting golden rays over their new path, the horizon shimmered with both uncertainty and hope. "This is just the beginning," David whispered, heart swelling with a mix of fear and excitement. He took Clara's hand, their futures intertwined like a tapestry yet to be written. And as they stepped forward, a shadow flickered across the horizon, lingering at the edge of their new reality. The adventure was far from over. As the screen fades to black, you must subscribe now to ensure you catch the next chapter of this story. You don't want to miss any of the exclusive tales coming your way. Smash that like button. Now is the moment to show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this shocking ending. And don't wait one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know how this unfolds. Your